child was born from a promise yet to be fulfilled, and was cast out into the wilderness to die. But in that very moment heaven opened, and a plan no one could have imagined began. Have you ever heard the story of the forgotten child, the one God himself heard? Welcome to Prayer Station. The promise to Abraham, the failure of impatience, the birth of Ishmael. Abraham lifted his eyes to the night sky. Countless stars shimmered across the deep black heavens. He tried to count them one by one, but then his aged hand trembled and fell. There are promises that time seems to blur away. Sarah stood inside the dark tent, her hands resting on her womb, a place that had known only silence for years. How many times had she silently prayed for a cry, a child's voice calling mother? But only sighs answered, heavy as the desert wind at night. 10 years had passed since the promise, and fear began to outweigh faith. Sarah looked at Hagar, the young servant girl, and a painful thought arose. If the miracle won't come, then man must make it happen. In a decision heavy with sorrow, Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham, not with joy, but with a desperation wrapped in obedience. Hagar became Abraham's wife, and very quickly she conceived. Ishmael was conceived. Not in songs of joy, but in the sighs of hope, bent out of shape. The boy was born. His first cry rang out through Abraham's camp, but not everyone heard that cry with gladness. In Sarah's eyes, the heavy meals shared by the family, Ishmael grew up under a sky of half love, half regret, a child both a gift and a painful reminder of impatient hearts. But the strange thing is, even though Ishmael was born of impatience, even though he was not the child of the miracle, God did not turn his face away. He heard that very first cry, he saw, and he chose not to forget Ishmael. Family tension, the banishment, life in the wilderness. Isaac let out his first laugh at the weaning feast. A child carrying the promise ran barefoot across the camp courtyard, with light flooding Abraham's eyes with joy. But behind that laughter was another gaze, cold, sharp as a blade from Sarah. She saw Ishmael, doing nothing wrong, just playing, laughing, maybe even teasing his little brother. But to Sarah, the boy was no longer innocent. He was the living reminder of a decision she regretted. He was a mistake still breathing, a shadow threatening the purity of the miracle she had waited so long for. And so the demand was spoken, not a request, but a sentence. Cast out the slave woman and her son, for the son of the slave shall not share in the inheritance with my son. Abraham stood silent, his heart shattered into pieces. How could he send away his son? Ishmael was his flesh and blood, the one he had taught to shoot arrows, the one whose eyes mirrored his so closely, the child who once held his hand before he knew what hatred was. But then God spoke, "Listen to Sarah, for through Isaac your offspring will be named. But I will also make the son of the slave woman into a nation, because he too is your son. A skin of water, a piece of dry bread, no embrace, no kiss, no farewell. Only two small figures, a trembling mother, a bewildered child, pushed toward the horizon. The wilderness of Beersheba opened wide. Sand burned their bare feet like fire, no shade, no hope. The wind carried away all the unspoken words of blame. Ishmael's footsteps grew heavier. Cracked skin, bleeding lips, he collapsed. And Hagar could only lay her child beneath a bush. I cannot watch my child die. And when everyone else had turned away, when the whole world sought to forget Ishmael's existence, God the creator of the universe, had heard. He didn't just hear, he called the boy by name. He opened Hagar's eyes and showed her a stream of water in the wilderness, in the place of death. A new promise was born. God's intervention, a personal promise for Ishmael. Hagar sat a distance away from her child, far enough not to see, far enough not to hear the weakening sound of his breath. She turned her face away. The sky dimmed to a cold gray. No more tears, no more prayers. Only a hollow chill remained in her chest. Ishmael lay beneath the shadow of a shriveled bush, his small body curled up from hunger and thirst. He had once been held in the tent of a patriarch. Now only burning sand surrounded him, and death drew near in silence. In that moment, a cry broke out, not the scream of one filled with rage, but the sob of a soul that knew it had nothing left to cling to. A cry for help without words, just a final breath reaching heaven. And heaven heard it. God, the maker of the stars and the depths, the one who had made promises to Abraham from the very beginning, he heard the cry of an abandoned child. An angel appeared, not in the glory of a temple, not during a grand ceremony, but in the heart of the wilderness where life had nearly run dry. The angel touched Hagar, not with rebuke, but with a question as gentle as cool water. Hagar, why are you crying? Do not be afraid, for God has heard the cry of the boy where he is. And then God opened Hagar's eyes. Right before her, amid the parched death, a well appeared, as if heaven itself had torn open the earth to pour out life. Hagar gathered Ishmael in her arms, gave him water to drink, and in that moment, with the child's breath returning, a new promise was born. God said, I will make him into a great nation. He too is a son of Abraham, not because Ishmael was perfect, not because someone interceded for him, but simply because God heard the lonely cry of that soul. In the wilderness, among the dust and the tears, God established a covenant made just for Ishmael, not of the holy lineage and not the child of the miracle, yet still a part of the divine plan of grace, Ishmael in God's divine plan. When the first drop of water touched Ishmael's cracked lips, an entirely new chapter began. Not a chapter of despair, but a chapter of a personal promise. The world may have seen Ishmael as the flawed result of human impatience. History may have defined him as an unintended consequence. But in the eyes of God, Ishmael was not a mistake. He was part of a greater plan wrapped in everlasting mercy. Ishmael was not born from a miracle. He was born from impatience, from human calculation. But even in that imperfection, God declared a truth that could never be taken back. I have heard your cry. That cry, the one the desert winds should have carried away, reached the throne of heaven. God, the one who writes human history with mysterious ink, did not erase Ishmael from his manuscript. On the contrary, he wrote his name into a plan for the outcast, for the souls who seem invisible to the eyes of the world. Ishmael became living proof of a truth that never changes, that God forgets no one. He turns what man calls failure into the foundation of wondrous grace, that even in the deepest pain, God is still writing a story we cannot yet see. Hagar once believed she and her son would die in loneliness, forgotten. But in that very moment of despair, a nation was born, a life thought buried under dust and sorrow, became the wellspring of tribes, of warriors, of prophecies yet to come. And so it is. Some lives are born imperfect. There are souls cast aside from their very first cry. But no life is invisible before the Creator. No one, no matter how they were born, is beyond the eyes of God. No one. Not Ishmael, not you. A comparison of Ishmael and Isaac in the light of the Old and New Covenants. Ishmael and Isaac, two children, sharing the same father, Abraham, growing up under the same tent, drinking from the same well in the wilderness. But between them, there was more than the distance of years, more than jealousy or the struggle for inheritance. Between them was an invisible line, an eternal division set by heaven itself, the covenant of the flesh and the covenant of grace. Ishmael was born from human strength, an effort, though sincere, to fulfill by human hands a promise that only God could complete. He became a symbol of the covenant of law, where man strives through his works to attain the divine, where every step is a burden and every prayer is weighed down by fear of failure, where every blessing must be earned before it can be received. But Isaac, he was born through a pure miracle, by supernatural power, not human ability. He became a symbol of the covenant of grace, where life comes from the impossible, where the promise is given not because of worthiness but because of love. Your very existence stands as proof of God's power and kindness. The book of Galatians in the New Testament explains it this way: we are no longer children of human effort, but children of the promise, born of the Spirit. Do you understand? You are not saved because you did well enough. You do not belong to God because you deserved it. You are not preserved because you knew how to keep the law. You belong to God because you were born of grace, because He called you out of the impossible, because you are a living miracle, not a self-made project. Ishmael and Isaac stand as two witnesses, one testifying to human strength and failure, one testifying to God's power and victory. And today, as you stand before unfulfilled promises, before unfinished dreams, remember this: we are not children of striving. We are children of the miraculous. We are the result of a supernatural promise, one that never fails. Do you see yourself in Ishmael? Have you ever felt like Ishmael? A child not born from expectation but from the concession, not born from a miracle but from the impatience of those who came before. Have you ever looked at your life and wondered, was I truly wanted? Am I just the product of a mistake? Do I belong, or am I just a wrinkle in someone else's story? There are days you walk among the crowd and yet feel invisible. There are moments you try to smile, but deep inside you wonder, does anyone hear the silent cry within me? Ishmael knew that feeling. He too once stood at the edge of a promise. He was once cast out from home. He too once lay beneath the shade of a bush, in a burning wilderness, unseen, unnamed. But when everyone else turned away, when it seemed that his story had ended, God heard. He did not listen to the noise of the world. He heard the broken whisper of a heart barely clinging to life. He heard, and He opened a spring, a path, a new future. And today, in the deepest place of the pain you hide, He is hearing you too. You are not a mistake. You are not a failed rough draft. You are not someone's reluctant choice. You are part of God's miraculous plan, a plan written with tears, grace, and unfailing mercy. Lift your head. The desert dust is not where your story ends. There's a well waiting for you. There's a new promise waiting for you. There's a future beyond every failure of your past, waiting for you. Lord, thank You for hearing the cries of forgotten souls. Thank You for never abandoning those the world has rejected. Today, I offer You the deepest silent pains of my heart, the parts of my life unseen by others, but always seen by you. Please open my eyes as you opened Hagar's, that I may see the well in the wilderness of my life. I believe I am not the result of a mistake. I am the child of a divine plan of grace. In the name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen.